And welcome to another edition of the Basic Thoughtonomics podcast. I'm your host, Chris Grosso. And for this episode, going to try and talk some hockey here. First time going into this subject. I've touched on baseball, basketball in some episodes, but I think as a country, we're missing all the sports too, including hockey as well. And very much looking forward to having this guest on. He is one of the hosts of NHL Tonight. During the baseball season, you could also catch him on the regular slate of shows. Also one of the hosts of Change Up on DAZN. He is Jamison Coyle. And Jamison, thanks so much for coming on today. How you doing so far? You getting adjusted to this lifestyle? Just how's everything going?
We're hanging in there. You got to change my intro a little bit because now I'm a kindergarten teacher and a woodworker and a painter by trade because that's how I'm kind of passing the days here at home. But with two young little kids, one's doing the virtual learning, the other one I'm just trying to prevent from wrestling and throwing toys all over the place, and a wife who's working full time. It gets a little insane around here, the day to day, but the most important thing is we are safe, we're healthy, and we're getting through it just like everybody else. Yeah,
that's how you gotta kind of approach it. Just have that positive mentality. I hear you, man. It's probably tough just being around the same people all day. I'm doing it here at home. But, well, like I said, get into some hockey for this episode. I think all of us as Americans, we're definitely missing our big four sports, basketball, football. Well, football is not in season, but baseball, hockey. And, I just want to ask straight up, there's been a lot of speculation on what's going to happen. But in your opinion, do you think hockey will come back this year and there will be a Stanley Cup champion crowned?
Everything I've heard, from the people that obviously make those calls, indicates that yes, they're going to do everything in their power to crown a Stanley Cup champion here in 2019, 2020. All of that, of course, depends on one thing, and that's when this coronavirus is contained and it's safe for everybody to kind of resume normal life again. But, just hearing the comments from the commissioner and the deputy commissioner, Bill Daly, it certainly sounds like they're going to do everything in their power, whether it's coming back, trying to finish some of the regular season or jumping right into the playoffs or shortened playoffs, whether it's having 4 neutral sites and no fans in the stands. Like, there are so many plans and moving parts on the table right now that I don't think there's any way that we don't get hockey back. If this COVID-19 continues on the trajectory that we think it's going to, hopefully sports is one of the first things we get back as far as, some sort of normalcy in life.
I'm here, man. I'm right on with you on that. And I feel bad for Gary Bettman. Like you said, Bill Daly definitely in a tough spot there just because safety is obviously the priority at this moment. And I think we just need to have things contained in regards to the virus and all that. But you think the game's going to come back, which is, I'm hoping it does. I think we all are hoping. Is there a proposal out there that's made more sense to you in terms of getting it back in regards to location?
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of evolving. The latest one I had heard was that 4 kind of sites, NHL-based arenas, because I think when they first teed up the idea of neutral sites in like North Dakota or Manchester, New Hampshire, it sounded good on paper, but then when you kind of get down to the nitty-gritty and you have multiple teams and you need hotels and facilities and all the kind of behind-the-scenes stuff to make the NHL work like it does, seamless, that wasn't going to work. So I think the latest proposal right now is 4 arenas around the league where they would maybe each host one for each division kind of thing. So you'd get one in the Atlantic, one in the Metro, one in the Central, one in the Pacific. And then you would almost play like 3 games a day, almost like Olympic format. And you get all these teams together in these local hotels, and literally the only thing they're doing is going to practice, going to play, and then they're self-isolating like everybody else. And, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of safety measures in place, whether it's taking temperatures, taking, coronavirus tests, things like that, just to kind of monitor the whole situation to make sure that it is a self-contained situation, that everybody inside of that containment area is, coronavirus free. And that way they can kind of go on with the sport in a limited capacity, but at least, the games will get played. And, best case scenario for the fans is they get to at least watch it on television. So I think it will come back in some way, and I think, that's the latest kind of proposal we have heard. And like I said, there's so many different things on the table right now that, this is evolving almost a day-to-day situation right now.
It kind of sucks because on one hand, I'm a traditionalist in the sense I want to see the sport played in front of the 20,000 seat arenas, in front of the fans, kind of have that playoff atmosphere that we see in all the sports. And I think that's what makes the playoffs so special, even like the end of the regular season. So it kind of sucks in that regard. I just feel like I guess I have to accept that in all the sports, there's probably not going to be fans in attendance. Just thoughts on that in terms of
what's worse, though. I'm going to flip this around on you. What's worse is having these games played with nobody in the crowd, but at least you get to watch on TV, or not having them at all, right?
That's
so
true.
I think that's how the fans are kind of approaching it. Like, look, this is the best of a worst case scenario, and if we've got to pick and choose, obviously we'd all love to be there. We were hitting the best point of our season, 10 games to go in the regular season, and then playoffs. And, I'm a little biased, but I don't think there's anything like Stanley Cup playoff hockey. There's nothing like it in the four major American sports, because these guys sacrifice life and limb out there. So for it to be a little bit different if and when this thing does come back, and there's, no ambiance or energy inside those arenas, it's going to be weird. But look, in sports, we always talk about overcoming adversity, and, that's what it takes to be a champion. Well, this is adversity like these players and these fans have never seen before, right? No, we've never dealt with something like this, at least in our recent memory. So for these players to come back and maybe have to get amped up for these games that have nobody in them, they'll have to go back to their peewee days when it was just, mom and dad in the crowd. That's a different kind of adversity. So I don't think, winning the cup this year loses any of that luster. It's different, but at the end of the day, you're still a champion, and maybe you've overcome the biggest obstacle we've ever seen in sports. It's just a different way of approaching it and thinking about it. And I think if we can kind of wrap our heads around that, look, this is a short-term fix. Like, nobody wants to see this thing. This isn't going to be the new normal. At least we hope. But if we can, some way, shape, or form, get back to just watching sports. I mean, how good was it watching the NFL draft the other night? It felt right. Like there was just something about it that was missing in our lives. That sense of normalcy, that rallying cry for everybody. And, if I think if we get some small sliver of what it used to be like, I think, beggars can't be choosers at this point.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, like you're saying, it's not going to be perfect. And I do think live sports would still help the morale of the country, and it would still give us a boost and make us feel more positive. So I see where you're coming in that regard. Just going back to the game on the ice, if the sport does come back, you could give your opinion, or you could just say what you think what you've heard on this, but will they conclude the regular season? Will they go right into the playoffs? Because you look at teams that were on the fringe, right in that like wild card picture in the Eastern Conference. You had the Islanders, Rangers, Panthers, all within striking distance. Western Conference, you had Vancouver and Minnesota right there, and you also have that disparity with games played as well. Like some teams are in the playoffs that had a few more games played. So I guess you could give your opinion, like I said, give your opinion or what you've heard. But do you think they will finish the regular season? Or I don't know if they could actually like do that or go right into the playoffs. Or I've heard this one, and I'd like to get your opinion on this. If you think they should scale the standings from like 68 games played, being that that's the minimum amount of games that every team in the league has played. So just, what are your thoughts on that?
So first and foremost, it's a business, right? And they want to finish the regular season because there's a 50-50 split when it comes to hockey-related revenue with the players and the owners. And if they don't get to finish these 11 to 14 games, like all 31 teams have remaining in their regular season schedules, then there's going to be a big deficit when it comes to that hockey-related revenue. So they're going to have to make that up somewhere. And how they do it is with escrow, and that would eventually come out of the players' checks down the road. So players don't want to be losing money out of their paychecks. So the players want to do everything in their power to make as much money as possible when it comes to that hockey-related revenue. And that way, everybody wins in that department. So I think there's going to be a concerted effort on both sides to try and finish the regular season. Now, the question is, how do you do that? Because we propose the 4 sites, right? These 4 neutral sites, or one team in each division kind of hosting them. But the thing is, if you get back to that, well, maybe a team like the Bruins had a team like Arizona on their, schedule for the final 13 games. Well, you're not going to send a Boston team out to Arizona. Like, if we get back, there's not going to be a lot of travel. They get these locations, they hunker down, and they finish out these games until the playoffs starts. So you have to do it in the fairest way possible. But at the end of the day, somebody's going to be left out. And at this point, I don't know what you do. I've heard things from, hey, just seed it right now, like 1 through 16. And if you played well enough at that point in the season, then you're in. And that stinks for teams that were charging hard late, getting healthy at the right time. So I
There's
don't
also
know.
that disparity with games played as well.
Right. And it's a hard pill to swallow. You can't tell me that a team that's played less games deserves to be out of the playoffs,
right,
just because their schedule wasn't advantageous. Like, I'm just happy that I'm not in the seat that has to make that call, because at the end of the day, I mean, this goes for playing checkers with my 4-year-old to running an NHL league. You can't please everybody, So I don't know how they're going to do it, but I think the teams are going to be reasonable enough to say, look, these are unpredictable circumstances. And at the end of the day, we're going to do the best thing we can in this worst case scenario. So whether that's, finishing all the games that we had in the regular season, maybe doing only half of those 7, playing different opponents within your division, they're going to do the fairest thing possible. But at the end of the day, I don't know what that's going to look like, because it depends on what this virus looks like, and how quickly we contain that depends on how much runway we have to finish the regular season.
Right. Yeah, like you said, like we were going back before, I don't think there's going to be a perfect solution with regards to bringing the games back, in regards to location. And same thing here. I just don't think there's going to be a way to please everyone. But yeah, just still want to get your thoughts on it, and on someone who's works within the game and loves the game. So yeah, we'll see what happens in regards to that. And just wanted to get your thoughts on how you think this delay will affect the teams. This is such a unique and unprecedented situation, especially for sports like basketball and hockey. Baseball, obviously, they're shut down, but this happened in spring training before the season started. Hockey, obviously a little different. They're like right in their stretch run, as you were saying, like 12 or 13 games left in the regular season. Just maybe just like take me into the mindset of a player. I know you're not a player, but if you could, just what do you think they're thinking? They're just like in the grind, fighting through to the playoffs, some of these teams, and then you just got to shut it down. And like, I just wonder what a player's mentality is. What do you think's going through their mindset right now?
I think you can look at it both ways. If you're a player like Steven Stamkos, right, or Chris Kreider, who was injured and maybe expected to miss the rest of the regular season and probably the playoffs if your team made it that far. Well, guess what? The reports are that these guys are healthy enough now with this delay and allowed to have some rehab time that they're good to go. So if you're the Bolts, you're ecstatic, right? Because you get your all-star player back in the lineup that makes you that much more, high potent offensively down the stretch, whether it's the regular season, the playoffs, because Tampa is going to be one of those teams in the mix. So when you think of it from a health standpoint, this could be a good thing. It allows every team a level playing field to get healthy again, because these guys are banged up, especially at the point in the season where we had played 70 games. I mean, nobody goes into the playoffs fully healthy. You're kidding yourself if you think that's how it goes, even though these teams will tell you, yep, we're healthy, we're ready to rock and roll. No, these guys are banged up. They're hockey players. You just don't find out about it until, they're on the opening tee box the next day once the season's done. When you think of it from the player standpoint of their well-oiled machines, we work with some of these analysts, and I'd ask these guys, hey, how many days off, like, until you felt like, you had no feel for the puck or anything like that? 2 days. These guys would tell me 2 days. So if they had an injury
crazy.
or even, it's unbelievable. But when you think about, these guys' lives and what they do, you talk about their equipment, their skates, their gloves, those are extensions of their body at this point with how much they're on the ice and how much they've been on the ice in their lifetime. So for these guys to, what are we at, 5 weeks right now? The NHL went on pause March 12th. We're at like 5 weeks. You're talking about ramping it back up from an off season, a complete off season.
Yeah,
so that's why I
crazy.
think the league has really, made it pretty clear that when the green light is given, teams are going to have essentially a 3-week window to kind of open up a training camp again, get these guys back up to speed, whether it's cardio. I assume a lot of these guys are strength training right now. And you see these guys like Michael Grabner and all these health nuts across the league staying in shape, whether it be Peloton, whatever they're doing these days. But nothing replicates games like games. So when they get back 3 weeks, but the difference between the start of a regular season and the start of this season is you have exhibition games, to start a regular season where these guys can kind of, let's say crank it up to like 50 to 80%. And then, opening night, boom, we're full bore at 100%. Well, you don't have those exhibition games, or at least it doesn't sound like we're going to play exhibition games, So these guys are going to have probably a 3-week training camp and then boom, 140%. Give it everything you've got because it's the stretch run, or it could be the start of the playoffs. So there's different ways of looking at it. It's good for some players and teams if you are one of the people banged up because you're healthy and you're probably feeling the best you've ever felt at any point during this season, other than maybe opening night. And from the standpoint of, these guys are creatures of habit, it might not be such a great thing because, the puck's going to feel like a 28-pound boulder and your skates are going to be like crusty and uncomfortable and your arches are going to hurt and whatnot just because, like I said, these guys, they say they take 2 days off and it feels like a completely different, like, planet that they're playing on. It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, 2 days.
But the playing field is level. Like, everybody's going through it. So I'm not saying they can make excuses. I'm saying it's going to be different. But, like, every team, all 31, going through the same scenario as human beings. Not just athletes, but we're all going through it together.
Yeah, right. And just how do you think this delay would affect team chemistry? Maybe a team that was playing well down the stretch, making that playoff push. And then, they're feeling good. Momentum. They got the momentum. Just chemistry's great. You think that'll be a factor at all?
Yeah, I think it hurts it because what we talk about, it's not how you start, right? You can't win the playoffs in October, November, but you can certainly lose. So we always talk about these championship caliber teams and getting hot at the right time down the stretch. Well, some of these teams were hot at the right time, firing on all cylinders, and all of a sudden this break. I don't think it helps your momentum. I think if anything, it curtails that momentum. So maybe good for the teams that needed to hit a pause, so to speak. This wasn't the pause they were looking for, but if they were in a kind of a tailspin, this might be the best thing to kind of clear the slate and come back with a fresh canvas and try to be that team that you were for maybe the first 3 quarters of the season. But for teams that had momentum down the stretch, I think, this is obviously tough, and I don't think you can do much to replicate getting that back. You can watch all the game footage you want of how you're playing well, but I think for athletes, there's just something feels different, right? You get that confidence, and I don't think you can just manufacture confidence without playing the games. So I think it hurts the teams that have momentum.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how this will play out if and when. Hopefully, as we were saying, the game comes back. So definitely interested to see how that plays out. Another thing I saw in the news about the game is there might be a little bit of a reduction in the playoff series. There might be, instead of best of 7 series, best of 5 series until the conference final. Just thoughts on that, or is your mindset maybe just I'm happy hockey's back in any form or fashion, but just any opinion on that, whether it be just shortening the playoff series to make them best of 5s? until the conference final?
Yeah, I think if that's what we have to make it happen, then that's what we have to have, right? I think in a perfect world, I want to finish the regular season, and then I want, 4 rounds, best of 7 series. Don't touch my Stanley Cup playoffs. Like I said, it's perfect. Don't touch it. But if there's only so much time that we have between now and the start of next season, I don't want to impact next season, right? That's the last thing we want to do. We want this little hiccup in history we want to get through it with as less bumps in the road as possible, and then we can get back on with our normal NHL lives next year. So if that means going back to a best of 5 format for the first 2 rounds and then best of 7 for the conference and the Stanley Cup final, I'm okay with that. I think that certainly favors certain teams that get out of gates quickly. You look back in the course of NHL history and the teams that have come back and had to win it, like in Game 7. Well, there has to be more of a sense of urgency, right, for a best of 5 now. So, look, I think everybody adapts, but like I said, everybody's going to have to deal with the same stuff. It's not like they're going to play best of 7 in the East and best of 5 in the West. So everybody's dealing with the same thing, and these are the cards you're dealt. So you either play them or you sit it out and let another team in. So, at the end of the day, the cup is still on the line, and at the end of the day, your name is going to be etched in the cup. And that's what these players grew up dreaming about. And like I said, I don't think it loses any of its luster. If anything, it's one of those ones that you look back on and you're like, you talk about adversity. Look what we had to get through.
Never forget this, like what we're all going through.
Exactly.
Yeah, and just wanted to wrap it up. Last question. I saw you, like we have a lot of downtime now with this social distancing stuff. I saw you playing some video games. I didn't know you were a big gamer. You got like your Twitch thing going. You're playing fans. Just talk a little bit about that. Were you always into video games, or did you more just get into it with this social distancing stuff going on? Just talk a little bit about your experience with video games.
Yeah, I love it. So this kind of, if you had told 7-year-old Jamison that eventually he was going to get to play video games for his job, like it would have been a dream come true. And right now I'm kind of living the dream. Yeah. So I've always loved video games. Me and my brother always had it from like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, you name it. We had the console and we always loved playing. But over the last couple of years, like I've only, with 2 young kids, my video gaming has been limited. So I always buy the NHL game. That's kind of my passion.
That's what I wanted to specify. Playing NHL 20.
Exactly. Yep. So I'll play with like my brother just online, and that's kind of our way of just keeping in touch because he lives on the other side of the country. But so when the league went on pause, the network approached me about, hey, we know that you play NHL on Xbox. Any chance you'd want to kind of head up our esports, Twitch account and all that stuff? And I was like, sure. How hard can this be? Yeah, I mean, and it's not that it's hard, but man, there's so much that can go into it. I didn't realize that it was this deep and can become this complicated. Like there's so much you can do with it, which is so cool because I have this time to learn it now that I'm loving it. So it's funny that you brought this up because I'm currently in the process of upgrading my whole kind of setup. So before I just had the Xbox in the living room, and my oldest son will play with me now, and I'll play online and whatnot. But I've realized that like when you go to stream through Twitch and stuff, that it's not that simple. You need like a gaming PC. You need a capture card. You've got to run this system called OBS, which is like a hosting platform, and it's almost like your own production suite, monitors, all this stuff. So anyway, the network has been gracious enough to kind of help me with all of this, and they've bought all the equipment that is necessary to almost have a professional type stream. So by the end of the week, we're hopefully going to be up and running. The hard part is that it all comes to my house, and then it's kind of on me to learn. I've been spending my nights just going down rabbit holes on YouTube, trying to learn as much as I can about the software and just things to make the stream better and more engaging for viewers. But even in just the bare bones basic stuff that we've been doing, where it's, we'll put a call out on social media. Hey, do you want to play, Jamison and Xbox? And we get so many people firing back their gamer tags that it's been really cool to just kind of play and, engage with the fans in the chat rooms and things like that. it's a blast. But man, the chirping is unbelievable. It's relentless too. Like,
from like the guys you're playing?
These people are nuts. Yeah, playing and like
people
hey,
take
send
it
us your
serious,
gamer
man.
tag. They're like, I'll smoke this guy.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
no. It's funny, but it's healthy competition, and I love it. I love it. So I'm excited to kind of get fully up to speed and running, and I think it's something that we can continue just doing and engaging with the fans, because I think we're learning right now that it's become a big part of the hockey culture. Like, a lot of the players have done it behind the scenes and just kind of been kept quiet about it, but now it's kind of cool. Like, it's
You mean the players are playing?
In the mainstream culture. Yeah, the players play. There's professional, like the Washington Capitals, I just learned, are the first team to have an esports division, and they actually have a player. His name's John Wayne, and he finished second in the World Gaming Championships last year. And they pay him. He is a player on their esports team. He represents the Washington Capitals esports team. So it's so cool, and I think that's kind of the direction that the league and these teams are going to be heading, is that they're going to have their own esports league, because it engages more fans, it provides more eyes on the sport, and two, it's a business. It's a way to make money. It's another revenue model. So it's really neat to have the time to kind of dive into this, because I don't think I really would have had the time, or maybe the energy to do something like this on top of what we already do at the network. But fortunate to kind of spearhead that endeavor right now for the network, and it's been a blast. It's been a lot of fun. So yeah, I get paid to play video games. So if you had told me that when I was 5,
oh, man.
I would have said, sign me up.
Right? That's the dream right there. I had no idea how complex it was too. Just I guess from like a revenue making perspective, because I play, but I'm kind of old school. I like to play the computer, whether I play like MLB The Show, Madden, whatever. But yeah, I never really got into it from an online perspective, playing other people that much. But yeah, that's crazy. I had no idea how popular it was. I guess from a social perspective and a revenue generating perspective.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, and you look at some of the top streamers out there, right? The top gamers, and our sport is a little bit niche. Hockey, obviously, we kind of fight that battle. So there isn't too many eyes as far as mainstream goes on the hockey stream. But you talk about games like Fortnite or Warzone right now, Call of Duty. I mean, you can get hundreds of thousands of people watching live. Just a person at a console playing. Like, it's insane. But people do it, and there's a lot of money to be made by those people, and they capitalize on it because they've got a very polished professional production, and it's content, and that's kind of the magic word these days. So it doesn't matter where you're getting your content or who's producing it, because if you're not, somebody else is. So it's a piece of the pie, and everybody wants kind of their sliver.
Right. Yeah, man. Wow, that's crazy, and I guess it's a good thing to do though. It's a productive way to stay occupied a little bit. Like I said, we all have a lot of downtime now, but I guess it's a way to just connect with people too, and to stay productive, stay busy. But yeah, I mean, that's so cool. Glad to hear you're enjoying it and having a good time, and yeah, and that pretty much hits on everything I wanted to ask you about. Hopefully, like all the sports, we get hockey back, hopefully sooner rather than later. And yeah, Jamison, just wanted to thank you so much again for coming on. Really appreciate it. Hope you and your family can continue to stay safe and healthy this time, during this time. And yeah, man, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Chris, thanks for having me. It was fun to talk some hockey. I don't get to do that nearly as often as I'd like to right now, but best of luck to you in your future endeavors with the podcast. And like you said, stay safe, and hopefully we can all get through this together and get back to sports and hockey sooner rather than later.
All right, absolutely. And thanks again. Have a great day.
You too.
All right. And that'll conclude things on this edition of the Basic Thoughtonomics podcast. Want to thank Jamison again so much for coming on. Fun conversation there. Really enjoyed it. Hopefully we get hockey back as well, in addition to baseball, basketball. And yeah, feel free to follow me on social platforms. My personal Twitter, Instagram is at ChrisGrosso16. The podcast handle on Twitter is at Basic Thought Pod. On Instagram, it's at Basic Thoughts Pod. So feel free to give me a follow, and hope you guys enjoy listening to this, and hope you guys continue to stay safe and healthy, and everything all works out, and hope you guys have a great rest of your week.